this is probably a little unfair to paint the whole decade with the same brush, but life happened to the Leafs, just like Gudas
It's a good way to
screaming in
put it.
their faces after dummying Camp in the corner. The Leafs just waited and waited and waited until life happened to them. They didn't go out and make it happen.
Played at the side of the goal in front of the net. They score! Holy mackerel! Matthews with the hat trick!
But Larson, Nylander wins him. William Nylander scores!
Game over! Bless you, boys! What a game! Tavares coming out, sends it in a goal. They score! They score! The Leafs have won it! They're going to the second round!
Welcome to another episode of the Six on Ice podcast. I'm one half Anthony. The other Anthony is out sick. So today we have filling in Greg Babinski.
Yes.
Greg, how are you doing?
I'm always happy to be the emergency backup host, Greg, otherwise known as eBug. That's one of my favorite places to be. And I'm happy to be here talking about the Leafs with you. There's so much to get into from on the ice to off the ice, so there's probably a lot of opinions percolating inside our heads and a lot of things that we're hearing from everyone around us that knows about the Leafs and a lot of explaining to everyone who doesn't,
I feel like you're watching this episode, you're pretty much a diehard Leaf fan as it is. You're actively seeking out content to confirm or push back against your views. But on that note, the Leafs versus Ducks game, let's start here right off the bat. Heading into the game, there was a lot of talk about Gudas and how Gudas was injured or was going through an injury, and he was still going to play because he had to do the right thing. And it's probably the most anticipated game for me, anyways, of the season. Just after how the Leafs handled it or didn't handle it at all, rather, 2 weeks ago when they played. So. Right off the bat, opening draw face-off, Domi and Gudas. What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I mean, it's probably the wrong place to express these opinions. Gudas is such an interesting character in the NHL. This dichotomy between like his off-ice comportment and his on-ice comportment. And obviously it's not even the first kind of incident here with the Leafs. I remember vividly him screaming in our faces as a Florida
Joseph Wolf.
Panther. Yeah, and crushing Camp after the whistle. Like, what are you going to do about it? So it's the same old song and dance, obviously. And to see some kind of response and very highly anticipated and fateful game with the Brad Tre Leaving firing before it, it's like the stage was set. And I think it's good that it was Domi. I think it's good that they did something.
I mean, it's obviously a bit staged at the end. At the end of the day, I mean, it was a good response, but that response would have been better 2 weeks ago when it really mattered most. And and I mean, the whole game, the Leafs were chippy, like especially Pizzetta. He was actually later thrown out, which is kind of interesting. What struck me the most was that Paris announced that he's going to be attending the game, and I just find that kind of interesting. You give a suspension for 5 games, don't even give it an in-person hearing, but what are you? By you announcing your attendance, are you going to say, play nice, fellas? Like, I don't, it just seems a weird move to make. I know he's done this in the past, like in some of the Tampa and Florida games where those get really heated. The Panthers seem to hate Hagel with every fiber of their being. But I don't know. Do you think that might have tempered the Leafs' response, having George Parros in attendance?
No, I mean, it's all like this conjecture, theater, and I'm going to show up. Oh, it's going to do this, do that. I think really like there's lots to be said about maybe some bias in the Department of Player Safety or how effective they are currently in general. But I think what's most important is this team on the ice showing a bit of character. So it was nice that it was more than just Domi who was angry. It was nice that it was more than just right off the start of the game. It's like they were angry all night, and that's good. That's good. It might be 2 weeks too late. It might be 10 years too late. It might not be enough, but at least for one night. At least for one night they did it, I suppose.
I mean, since we last filmed our last episode, the Leafs are 3-2-1, and they can't seem to pick one mode. They're not. I guess they're mid. Really, they are unable to tank effectively because they're not quite that bad, but they're also not good. They're going to miss the playoffs. I mean, for me personally, I know the argument's for tanking, but I don't think we're passing, what is it, the Canucks, Chicago, Calgary, Vancouver. Oh, sorry, I said Vancouver. Who was the other team? St. Louis. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to pass any of them. I think there's the draft lottery. I think we need to have more games like the Ducks, where you're showing character, and this has been something that has plagued this roster throughout the Matthews era, is that nobody shows character. It's always one or two guys. It's Michael Bunton, it's Domi, but you're right. In the Ducks game, it was everybody. McCabe was chippy, Pizzetta was chippy, Cowan was chippy. It's
That's a
just, I
big one.
feel, yeah, I feel it's what they should do. They should really work on kind of fixing this quote unquote culture. Which, I mean, I guess with the Tre Leaving firing, which we'll get to momentarily, is the start of it.
Yeah, I think it's the big thing in the room is this now vacancy at the GM position, uh, and more so where it goes from here. Obviously, there was the Pelly press conference, and how much are we trusting his vision of the team? There's just so much to get into, and from my opinion, like it maybe even starts with like what's realistically possible given the state of the team. Because I know that some people are, oh, it's time to like completely blow it up. Um, and that's the quickest way forward. But it doesn't make sense to be bad if you don't have your own first round picks. So I don't think, as much as maybe I think that it's important to go in a completely new direction and start over or whatever you want to say, it's not practical to even do that in the next 2 to 3 years, really.
I think, and this is what Pelly kind of mentioned in his presser, that we're retooling, we're not rebuilding. We have foundational pieces, Matthews and Nylander. Matthews' contract is up in 2 years. If he leaves, if he goes to a cup contender or he goes wherever, at that point, I think you might have to seriously consider rebuilding.
Yeah.
But by then, we'll have our first round picks back. Either we give up this year's and next year's, or we give up next 2 years if we somehow make it in the bottom five. So I think at that point, if Matthews doesn't want to stay, and yeah, absolutely rebuild, and please don't wait like a decade to make that decision between like 03 and then 2015. It was just years and years of just mediocrity. But so Tre Leaving has let go. His record as the GM for the Leafs: 139 wins, 92 losses, and 27 overtime losses. Decent record, I guess, but obviously it's much more nuanced than that. Do you think this firing was at the right time? That they should have did it earlier in the season? What's your take on it? Like, why now?
Yeah, it's a tough, complicated question, I guess. I think definitely it was time. Um, I think it's important to acknowledge that as much as it's terrible right now, and it looks like the Leafs will be, they look very directionless, and like it's going to be very difficult to turn things around. That last season was technically the best season that the Leafs have had in the Matthews era, in terms of winning the Atlantic Division, in terms of like making it to a Game 7 in the second round instead. Marginal improvements, obviously, but still notable that their best season of the Matthews era happened under Tre Leaving. And yet here we are. That's really speaks to how big of a mess the team is in right now. It speaks to, yeah, just a lot. I mean, it's hard to ignore what Tree Living did in Calgary and how similar this might feel to that. Uh, yeah, and it's bringing into focus just a lot of like questions about what makes a good GM and what is a good direction, and maybe recontextualizing some of the work of the people who were here before. Like people are clamoring for a Shanahan like president now. And it was just 2 years ago where we were talking about, oh, what has he achieved? What this era of entitlement? So it's hard to know, like, what is going to make a good GM? How do you really define success, especially when you don't win any Stanley Cups? um,
Or at the very least, make it to the third round a couple times.
yeah,
It's just been constant failure. It's not like they were hard fought losses. It was just like a systematic like dismantling in every key situation. Um, I think for me, MLSC waited a little bit too long to move off of Tre Living. I mean, if you want to get into it, I think they should have moved off of Berube in December, and they didn't.
right.
And we're going to talk about Berube at the end here. I think if you were to move off of Berube, you get a new coach in, you could possibly still turn the season around, and we'll be having a completely different conversation than we are right now. I think the fact that Tre Living waited between like July 15th, 2025, to the trade deadline to make any significant roster changes is just unfathomable. I think he picked up like 3 waiver pickups, and one of them was Troy Stetcher, which was a very good pickup.
Oh, yeah.
But the Leafs were in free fall from the opening night onwards, but noticeably from December, and you didn't do anything. And then when you get to the trade deadline, the trades weren't the best. So I think for me, I think that kind of sealed the deal that this person is just doesn't have it for the team.
Yeah, well, I mean, this team, like this iteration of the team, failed in exactly the ways that they were not supposed to. They were built to be a big, physical, defensive team, and they're terrible at defense and they don't stand up for each other. But this whole era has been defined by a lack of imagination, by a lack of making a bold move in a sense. This is probably a little unfair to paint the whole decade with the same brush, but life happened to the Leafs, just like Gudis
It's a good way to
screaming in
put it.
their faces after dummying Camp in the corner. The Leafs just waited and waited and waited for until life happened to them. They didn't go out and make it happen.
They weren't proactive. Yeah.
Yeah. So and we'll see. I think it's going to take a lot of proactivity probably to get this back on the rails. I think how you do so is lined with a bunch of ifs and maybes. It's a really narrow path to actually getting any better. But they're going to have to try, and uh, they really, the way I see it, is the Matthews contract. Like this time last summer or next summer is going to be when you really have to decide on Matthews, whether you're going to extend him or whether you're going to trade him. I mean, I guess the worst case is he walks for nothing. But you have basically next season to like kind of get this era back on the right track, if that's even possible. And then you really start having kind of tough conversations of like, do we want to start a rebuild with Matthews at 30, signed to a new contract? Is that is that the prudent thing to do? Especially, we'll see how they finish. There's a lot of projecting, but this next season is hugely important. And if you're going to trade Matthews instead of letting him walk, you need to have like just a clear, open line of communication with him on like where he wants to go. You can't be holding out for the best package. You have to be like, Matthews, if you want to go somewhere else, just tell us. Tell us where you want to go. You want to go to LA, whatever it is. Like, but you need complete honesty. So whatever happens next season, they're obviously going to try to get it back on the road. You got 1 year to kind of figure it out. And then you have to be decisive. You have to be decisive. That's
I mean,
the way I see this GM. Whoever they're going to hire is like, you need you need to figure it out in that year, really.
No, this is very similar to Mitch Marner. I mean, more time this time. So we have about a year, but Tre Leaving was brought in when Marner had, I think, 6 weeks before his no trade clause kicked in. And I mean, you could probably still make a trade with that. I think personally, I think Shanahan was kind of still pulling the strings. When Dubas was let go, he hinted that he's going to trade either Marner or Nylander or both, possibly both of them. And Shanahan allegedly phoned the core four at the time, said, "No, everybody's staying, don't worry." But you're right. I think this is going to be the critical year. If the Leafs can turn it around, they can actually go on a deep playoff run for the first time in this era and actually look good every single game. I think that would be very encouraging for Matthews to resign. And in Matthews' defense, he was asked, "Hey, if we were to be sellers at this trade deadline, would you be okay with that?" And he said he's okay with it. I mean, what is he going to say at that point? But um, for me, I wonder who they're going to bring in. From the Keith Pelly presser, it sounds like they want to hire a president, and the GM candidate has to have an understanding of data. They have to be analytics oriented, evidence based decision making. I mean, when Pelly was saying that, the first person that popped in my mind was Kyle Dubas.
Yeah. 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 And Dubas, well, I think was proven to be a really good GM. I mean, that doesn't mean that it wasn't the right time to move on from him, for example. More than one thing can be true. But yeah, it's definitely someone that comes to mind. And I do agree that it's good to have like maybe an old school hockey person as the president and maybe a new school kind of more outside the box thinker as the GM. That does seem to have a nice ring to it, at least.
Who do you want to fill the president role when they go out and make a decision? Who's who's somebody that comes to mind?
Like it's funny because you were talking about, oh, that sounds like Dubas. That sounds like Shanahan. That sounds like Shanahan. Here we go, just running in circles. And I mean, I don't know who I would want it to be. I guess like traditionally, organizations will find former players to be in that role, someone who really is personally invested in the fabric and identity of the team. So you could say, oh, maybe it's Sundin or maybe it's Clark. I think you're probably looking for someone, an ex-Leaf, in all honesty. Toronto, you could say, oh, you could have any player that is from here or grew up a Leafs fan. It's true. But I'm not really that concerned on who it is more than like what needs to happen for this to work out, you know? Obviously, May 5th is going to be huge, the draft lottery, figuring that out because it's a really awesome top 10. And if you were picking somewhere between 6 and 10, you would probably be getting an amazing defenseman. And the Leafs desperately need, what was it, foundational pieces on the back end. Because right now it's a bunch of older guys who, in 2 years might not even be playable. And you got like Danford and maybe like some hopes and prayers on the way. So yeah, it's I think figuring out a way to build a good blue line. If you talk about the big trains of the Sabres and the Habs and the Red Wings, these young teams that are on the rise, and the Senators as well, like all of them have multiple foundational pieces on their blue line. We're talking.
It's almost like these teams didn't spend all their money on 4 really good forwards. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I mean, unless the Leafs finish within the bottom 5, their pick is going to go to Boston. So yeah, you're right. It's probably going to be a very good player. Probably is very realistic probability that they finish like 9th or 10th in the league, and Boston's going to get a decent player.
I have a few favorites projected in that range, and I can see it already. Like Carson Carroll's in a Bruins jersey. Just
this reminds me of the what was it, the Phil Kessel trade, this Tyler Seguin and Dougie Hamilton, and oh
Yeah,
my God, just why is it always Boston? It's always Boston.
I
but
know. It's terrible. It's terrible.
but again, this kind of just goes to show Trey Living just waited way too long. He didn't get a good return for McMahon or Lawton, especially Lawton. Um,
I don't
and
know, man. The McMahon one is killing me because I'm just getting Zach Hyman kind of flashbacks. Like, yeah.
all all the players that they traded, Law, McMahon, and Lawton are doing amazing, especially Bobby McMahon. But they're all scoring goals. They're all looking really good. It is
Right.
an indictment, I feel, on Trey Living. He just waited way too long. He didn't get the return that he should have gotten, and he just panicked. And similar to when he made the trades the first time for Carlo and for Lawton, he just panicked, and it just didn't turn out. Now, for me, the Lawton and Carlo trades, I thought at the time they could work out. They seemed kind of reasonable for the least were, but for me, when is the nail in the coffin was the fact that Trey Living just didn't adapt. He just was like paralyzed throughout the whole season when Carlo allowed Mason Marchman to run in the Stolers, didn't have a response. When saw it again with Gudis and Matthews, it's just he waited too long to pivot, and that's just unacceptable in my opinion. So whoever they're bringing next, um, if it's going to be an old school hockey guy, is it going to be a Kyle Dubas kind of general manager? I don't really care. I just need somebody to take action, less lip service, more action kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it's gonna be a tough. I think, yeah, it's gonna be just really interesting. I think if I'm trying to imagine like the best case scenario, something you said about the players that traded away thriving elsewhere is like it happens sometimes that when a coach kind of has lost the room, people are going to have down seasons. So you're definitely expecting that that's part of the bounce back. As a new coach re-energizes the room, and you start seeing some better performances, or just anyone having a career season would be nice, you know? So uh, I think that's going to be a huge part of it. I mean, the pick, we'll find out. Obviously, it would be huge to get a top end talent at this point. I think about early on in McDavid's career, the Oilers struggled and they ended up with some top picks, and some of them maybe didn't work, like Broberg, how they wanted to, and then but they also got Evan Bouchard as a top 10 pick. Like it happens before that you can kind of supplement your team with like a bad season like this. But obviously, that's only if you have your own pick. um,
Yep.
so we'll see. There's a small chance that they could be adding a huge talent this year and the new coach bounce back and a healthy Tanner. But there's just, and I would say like the other thing that probably has to happen is taking gambles on younger players. In the last year or two, we've seen Trevor Zegras moved for not that much because people didn't believe in him. Just like maybe we saw another really high draft pick, Sam Bennett, move for not much when he was struggling in his career. We also saw Bowen Byram moved, and now Zegras and Bennett and Byram, they're excelling on their new teams. I think you have to try to find one or two reclamation projects like that where everyone's down on them now. Maybe it's like a David Jiricek in Minnesota where like people might be giving up on a formerly high pick and you kind of swoop in and give them a new chance, a new in the league, and it pays off. I think hitting on investments like that will be imperative, especially with such a thin free agent class and not many assets to trade. Like you gotta walk the tightrope, you know.
And that's one of the things Pelly said in his press conference. We need to acquire more draft picks and prospects. And
Mhm.
yeah, we have a couple NCAA prospects. They seem promising, but prospects are still just in a way magic beans at the end of the day. You don't know what you got, and it's going to take multiple years for them to actually develop. And you're right. This free agency class this offseason is horrible, horrible. So the new GM has his or her work cut out for them.
Yeah,
It's going to be interesting. It's not like the Leafs are kind of just starting their window. They're near the end, and it's they need to hit some home runs.
yeah,
They need to get lucky on some reclamation projects. They need to just start playing like a team, willing to die for one another. I mean, I think we've been spoiled with like the Blue Jays, just seeing like the the guys on the bench and how they just like literally play their heart out for one another. You can go through Florida, Tampa, Boston, even San Jose, just seeing like Celebrini and everybody there. We don't see that with the Leafs. We haven't really ever seen that with the Leafs. It's always been like one or two character guys, but like the very like I just don't know how you fix this in an off season where the UFA class is weak. You don't have any picks. You have some prospects, I guess, but not enough to really entice big changes. So what do you do?
yeah. No, it's really thin margins. But I think something that you said earlier is definitely part of the equation as well. And it reminds me of like maybe the Raptors as well, a story of how they kind of came together and went from like in the early 2010s from a team that was just always on the ropes, and they kind of looked at each other and said, "No, we're in this together. We're doing it for each other." And that's really when the franchise started to turn itself around. Um, I think you're going to need that spirit. And that's why I think some things that we want to hit on today, like Cowan showing a lot of jam, is huge. Because Matthews and Nylander, they're not enough on their own for this team to be good. There's going to need to be more contributors like Nyes and Cowan, and those contributors need to have a better attitude than this team has had in the past. So to see kind of like such a strong response from Cowan, um, is huge, and that is going to need to be infectious throughout the whole team of like of coming together, um, of being different culturally, and that culture that the Bruins seem to always have, and the Leafs seem to never have. It's like at some point, no matter what rebuild or draft picks or retool or reclamation projects, at some point the answer's got to come from within the room, from within the team, from within the spirit. Um, like that's the big thing. So I think if you're looking for positives, that something like this kind of really impassioned uh, stretch of play from Cowan is like one of the big reasons for optimism. You get that new coach bump, a few gambles, and you start to actually kind of build that culture, however it happens, whoever is a part of it. Yeah, I think that is the other main thing. And how do you do that for them? You can't, they have to do it for themselves. Yeah.
On one hand, I feel kind of sad in a way that we are pinning a cultural change on the shoulders of a 21-year-old Easton Cowan. It's a
Yeah.
shame that Matthews or Nylander or Riley just don't seem to have that, I guess, dog in them. It again, I look at Celebrini, I look at Nathan McKinnon, McDavid, even Sidney Crosby. Still, just they just have that compete, and these Matthews and Nylander don't really seem to. They show flashes, of brilliance, but they just don't seem to have that consistent tone-setting kind of attitude that you would expect from your as Keith Pelly said, your foundational pieces. So for you then,
Mm.
is Cowan an untouchable piece, or if you get a good package for Cowan, do you ship him out of town?
Uh, I don't think anyone on this roster is untouchable. I think that's probably 5 years too late to say that, but it's true. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the Bruins have culture and the Leafs don't, is because they look at players as like, you can't be bigger than the team, no matter how talented you are. Phil Kessel or Tyler Seguin, we're going to try to do what's right for the Bruins, the team, always first, first, first. That kind of like, that is exactly, so I don't think you can get say Cowan is an untouchable. I think that'd be incorrect. I think that he should be a big part. And, it's maybe not fair to say, hey, this rookie is going to be a leader on our team, but why not? I mean, we're seeing that around the league. Like, he was picked in the first round for a reason. He was OHL MVP for a reason. Like, he's in the show now. It's not too early. It's time. And we can have some patience with him and like, yeah, sure, maybe he didn't produce like a top 6 forward this year, but maybe he can, maybe he can next year. That's fine. Maybe he's not like known as like Darcy Tucker right now, but like there's no reason why he can't be the emotional leader for this team in the future. And I think to see him trending in that direction is not too soon. It's exactly the right time. It's exactly the right time.
No, that's a very good point. I think the way in which Cowan was utilized this year by Berube has not been very, I guess, optimal to his strengths.
Yeah.
Cowan is quite clearly a top 6 player. I went to the Ottawa game and they lost 5-2. This is a horrible, piss poor effort all around. But you could see Cowan's playmaking ability, just passing how he passes the puck in tight to John Tavares for his his 26th goal of the season, if I'm not mistaken. You get to see his offensive creativity. It's there. Yet Berube seems to be content with playing him like 8 to 10 minutes in the bottom 6, and I get that. He made the team out of camp for his strong two-way play. Excellent. Start him on the 4th and 3rd line. Cool. But you need to give him more opportunities to develop his skill sets. He has the potential to be much more than a David Kampf or a Kalle Järnkrok. I'm like, no disrespect to those players. It's just his skill is a little bit more like higher end than that. And now we're seeing with all the injuries and the trades that he's on like the first line with Tavares and Nylander. But I think he's like flourishing. But I think we might have stunted his development a little bit this year by continuing to scratch him and play him lower in the lineup than we should have.
Yeah, I guess like maybe you could nitpick, but if he's showing progress, I'm not really going to complain too much about how we got here. Next year, I hope it's more, obviously, but like it can be frustrating, but like this is how it goes for young players. Like sometimes it's not what you want to see is that continued growth. Like if we're thinking about maybe another like smaller skilled player with an edge, Marchand, of like maybe that's something that Cowan can follow in his footsteps because Marchand didn't come in as like a top line guy. I mean, he was slowly working his way up, and all of a sudden in his 30s, he starts becoming a 100-point player. Not that it has to take Cowan that long, but I think just, and seeing kind of him come out of this adversity that's not just for himself and his own ice time, but the team itself was in this kind of like identity crisis, and he's stepping up. Like, that's huge. It sucks how we ended up in this moment where he's now relied upon, but yeah, it's so encouraging to see how I don't know, like I'm obviously not going to expect that he's a point a game player next year. I think that's a little unfair, but I think that he can be a big part of this team's skill and personality for sure next season. It's time.
And I think people were looking at Cowan and how productive and how prolific he was in the OHL, back-to-back MVP, back-to-back Memorial Cup winner, MVP, and I think the first win. And they're like, wow, this is the next second coming of Mitch Marner, and very few players are going to be like Mitch Marner and Nylander, Matthews of that ilk. It's so I think some look at points and he's not developing. It's just like, no, he's developing. It's going to be not quite as it's not good. You're not going to get a Mitch Marner, and I think some fans are disappointed. But I agree. I think Cowan brings more than Mitch Marner, or potentially brings more than Mitch Marner. You mentioned Darcy Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love it if Cowan could develop into this generation's Darcy Tucker. That would be phenomenal. Like they need a couple of players like that. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
so do you think then that the reason why we're seeing such a fall this year is it Craig Berube? Is all the issues kind of coaching, and the team has clearly given up on Berube? from like November onwards. So, in your opinion, do you think this is like a coachable? There's a coachable solution that can be.
Mm, I mean, yeah, I think that like you can like anytime that everyone on a team is having a down year, like I don't know, it's a bad look for the coach. That's not to say that they can't coach. I think, yeah, Mr. Right and Mr. Right now are different things, you know. Like we got like you could be a good coach, but if you've lost your team, what does it matter how good of a coach you are? So I think you can hope. I think you can hope that we're going to see because this year, like maybe it was Ekman Larson who had a good season, like Cowan now maybe, but like that's probably more to do with development than anything. But who had a good year? And no one really. Nylander, I guess. In a
I think the
way, he's always
goalies.
scoring.
I think
Um,
our goaltending was like pretty good. It went back to kind of, I
uh,
guess, average, league average
yeah.
on some nights. So it wasn't like lights out exceptional like it was last year. But I think Wool and Hildeby had a really good year. Um, all things considering. But you're right. Not very many players had a really good season. McMahon, but he's no longer on the
Right.
roster.
Right. Who
Yeah,
knows? Yeah, McMahon, I have a feeling is going to keep improving. Honestly, like I think his next 2 or 3 years will be better than his previous 2 or 3 years. So he'll be an interesting guy to watch. Um, but yeah, I think the blue line is definitely I'm circling it a whole bunch of like how how is this gonna get fixed or improved? And like, especially it seems like Riley might get traded. It's like I get that maybe people want that, but it's the unfortunate reality that we might also have to come to terms with Berube or True Living. Is like just because they're gone doesn't mean the next person is going to be better. And so,
no, it's very true. Um, but fortunately, there are a couple of good coaching candidates out there.
mhm,
What comes to mind is Bruce Cassidy. Maybe Vegas
mhm.
gave the Leafs a threw
Return.
them a bone.
Yeah.
Cassidy generally has his teams play a possession style kind of game. He likes to generate chances off the transition. Very similar to Sheldon Keefe. That was very successful, at least in the regular season here in Toronto. Defensively, he prefers quick puck movement and plays a defensive system that focuses more on like protecting areas of the ice instead of man-on-man coverage, which is what Berube loves to play. And clearly, this roster cannot play man-on-man coverage. It's just they're not fast enough, or there's no will to play that kind of tiring kind of a system, or both. It's just clearly Berube's systems are just not working. So yeah, I hope that they would go out and hire like a Bruce Cassidy. I think that would be a
Yeah.
very good hire, in my
Would you
opinion.
rather Cassidy or DeBoer? I would guess those are kind of the main two, the
I
biggest
wrote,
names out there right now.
yeah, I wrote articles on both of them. DeBoer earlier on in the year, and then recently on Cassidy. I think both are good choices. I forget what the stats are, but I think there's only been like one or two coaches that have won multiple cups with like different teams. So it
Right.
seems so just because Cassidy and I don't think DeBoer has won yet, but Cassidy won with Vegas in his early on in his tenure. There's no guarantee he's going to win with Toronto. But I think you can't go wrong with either one of those coaches. DeBoer in Dallas, they made the third round. What was it, 3 years in a row, or 3 years within his tenure there? It really good success. He knows how to play with stars. He had like Ranton in there. Did have good goaltending in Jake Ottinger, who called him out and then kind of got fired from that. But I mean, coaches don't get fired because they're doing a good job. So I feel
Yeah.
every coach is going to have his wards. But yeah, I think either or would be a good choice, personally.
Right. I mean, coaches, it's tough. I mean, there's only a couple that actually stick around. Everyone else is like, it's a 2 or 3 year thing, anyways. People talk about like, oh, wears on his players, like especially Cassidy right now is like, oh, he's maybe got like 3 year expiration period. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like most coaches right now.
Standard.
Yeah.
I feel that's kind of the standard tenure. I think we, as Leafs fans, we've held on to Babcock for too long. We held on to Keefe for like too long, and I mean, well, Berube kind of just is in year two, so it's kind of
But it might still be too long. Yeah. No.
still be too long.
Um,
Um, for me, I was just thinking about it now. I think I would probably lean more towards Bruce Cassidy, and the only reason is we saw Boston in the playoffs multiple times during the Matthews era. We saw Cassidy outcoach the shit out of Mike Babcock in both those series, just made him look ridiculous. But I think wherever Cassidy went to, when you look at how Boston plays under him, when you look at how Vegas, other than this year, played under Bruce Cassidy, like those are systems and teams that have like a good team culture. They're a very cohesive culture, very winning, wanting to win kind of culture. I feel there's a reason why both those teams hired Bruce Cassidy, because he can likely instill that into the players a little bit. Now, of course, as we discussed, you kind of need to have players that actually have that kind of dog in them. But I think for that reason, I think that gives me kind of the edge over De Boer.
right. Yeah, I like Cassidy a lot too. The other option is like to go, and I kind of doubt that the Leafs will do this, but like go with a first time hire. Some people really prefer that method and maybe going with a more unorthodox course. Like obviously, Lubas comes to mind with Sheldon Keefe, but also with his current Dan Muse in Pittsburgh, who's done a great job. But I doubt that will be the path. It's interesting. I would say Lane Lambert, who was a Leafs assistant with the Seattle Kraken now, has done a really nice job. Like the Washington Capitals aren't in it this year, but a lot of people like another former Leafs assistant, Stephen Carberry. Like, so there's been some talent behind the Leafs bench before. I don't know. I think like it's such a it's hard for me to say, having never been an NHL player or coach, what would make a good coach. It's obviously you have to be able to connect with your players on some level. I've been listening to a lot of John Cooper interviews. He was on After Hours in the last month, and it was interesting to hear his kind of thoughts on it, especially as the longest tenured coach right now.
I'm convinced Cooper is like some kind of like professional speaker. Like he's just, the way he's able to motivate his players is just insane. I think McDavid got a little spoiled at the Olympics, and he went back to Edmonton, and
I know, yeah, that was so funny.
Getting really frustrated. But yeah, there's probably a handful of really good coaches in the NHL. Cooper is definitely one of them. And I don't, no way Toronto's ever going to get Cooper, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not sure where the Leafs are going to go this summer. They don't have much assets. They need to hire a president. They need to hire a general manager well before May 5th, or ideally, I guess, June 1st. But you want to give the GM some time to plan for the draft and whatnot. Kind of
Yeah,
like how we were in 2023, we're between a rock and a hard place, and
yeah.
it is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it was the right thing to move off of True Living, but it was definitely concerning thinking about the similarity of that timeline. Like, of like, is the GM really going to have, I don't know, the time to do what's necessary? The scouts really run the draft. I don't know how much the GM actually does outside of maybe the top pick having a preference one way or another. I mean, I think, yeah, the roster decisions are obviously gonna be crucial. It's gonna be crucial, and are gonna have to happen soon. It's not, yeah. Hopefully, like we were saying before, hopefully they've learned that they just can't be so passive and patient. That the time is now. There's not a young team that's going to be improving if you wait for things to get better. You know, like there's maybe the Detroit Red Wings are falling out of a playoff spot, and you could argue, hey, just hold on a bit. There's some young players on the way. Maybe next year it's going to be better. But the Leafs, that's not the case. That's not the
The Leafs
case.
are rapidly approaching the end of their window. Probably in 2 years.
Uh,
Maybe if you extend Matthews, maybe extend that to 4 years. But the covers are bare prospects. It's they're gonna have to figure it out, and we're here again,
yeah,
critical off season, with no direction.
it's an interesting thought I had, and maybe a bit of revisionist history. But do you think the window was ever open? Like, do you think
No,
that do you think that the Leafs were good enough, and or that maybe it's been so hard for them to perform in these big moments because they took it as far as they can go? I mean, the team has seemed pretty lifeless in some big moments. And they have blown some huge leads and and others. So maybe they were good enough, but they just choked, or maybe they were never good enough, and they need a lot of talent before we even start thinking of windows.
I don't think they were really ever good enough, to be honest. The only caveat is the season where they got Ryan O'Reilly
Oh,
and Nola Chari. So and Nyes came up in 2023. That was the first time I'm like, okay, this team can actually maybe go on a deep playoff run against the first season against Washington, where they took what was it, 3 of the 5 games, 6 games, sorry, out of
right.
to overtime. A proportion of the games went to over. They forced overtime, so it was yeah. Other than those 2 years, uh, personally, I don't think they've been good enough. I think they had a collection of really good players. The mix just the combination of players just didn't work out, and they
Mm,
needed to move off of them. And to your point earlier, the defense, they should have moved off of Riley. And hindsight is 2020. The very few teams win championships when they don't have that solid number one defenseman anchoring the back end. And Riley's maybe a good number two or a good second pair defender, but we've never had a true number one since Thomas Caberlet. Ryan McCabe, maybe? Like, don't want to date myself too much here, but it's
oh, don't worry. No, I mean, it's I think that this is maybe a bigger conversation, but like I think that people don't really appreciate defensemen enough. Like, for example, it's really common for people to fuss over like or list people as like a left wing or a right wing, which I think is not really an important distinction. Yet we're just throwing all the defense into the same bucket. They're not as noticeable just because they're not maybe scoring points. But when you watch the playoffs, you start to notice just how important defensemen are in controlling the game. Like, you're going up against a Deno Chara, and he's there for half the game, and you can't do anything when he's there. You're like, oh wow, this makes such a huge difference. So I think, yeah, if you were, there was one season where Riley finished like really high in Norris voting, which was mostly to do with his offense,
yep.
and he's still, yeah, but there was never a Norris candidate or a perennial Norris candidate, one of the best defensemen in the league. And if you look at the cup winning teams, like you could say Florida is interesting because who would you put as their Norris candidate? I mean, they don't really have one. They have Forsling, who's maybe their best. Uh, they have had some other good ones like Ekblad. I don't think people appreciate at all. um,
Oh, that's fair.
Montour was really good, but not a Norris Trophy winner. Seth Jones, people clowned on, but he's still effective. So I
But other
think
than
that,
Jones, but other than
yeah.
Jones, would you say that all three of those players are better than Riley? Is that a fair statement to make?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, is Jones might be better than Riley. I think that people get uh, especially when the cap was frozen, people were so focused on how much people were making and the perceived value of that. Like right now, Darnell Nurse in Edmonton, everyone thinks he's like a terrible liability because every time he makes a mistake, they're like, "Oh, we're paying this guy $9.5 million or whatever it is." He's continues to be like their shift leader, their shutdown defenseman, handling the minutes when McDavid isn't on the ice. Um, he's probably better than Riley, and yet everyone just has bad things to say about him. I just think it's like to understand like what makes a good defenseman, I think takes a bit of nuance, especially because it's not obvious like a winger. Oh, they're putting up points, so we can tell. So I think that yeah,
I mean,
there's probably some stuff for the Leafs to work with. McCabe, there's a lot of game there. Ekman Larson was great this season. Tanev, I still think is really good. Carlo, for example, people don't like. Obviously, would have been nice if he fought Mason Marchment. Like he's not a fighter. He's a big guy. He's not super punishing physically, but that is still a rare commodity. Like I watched enough Justin Hall on this team to like be able to appreciate what Carlo brings, if you know what I mean.
I mean, both things can be true. I mean, you could
Yeah,
say Riley might have more innate skill than Jones, but in terms of role on the team, Jones is probably hitting above, or maybe at his
right.
at
Less
his
is
weight
asked
class
of him. Yeah,
versus Riley, who we're expecting him to be like an offensive defenseman, and he's not really good at defending. So it's kind of this weird enigma that we have on the back end. But
um, it'll be interesting. And we'll see. Like the team's gonna move off of Riley likely,
I'll be
and
surprised. He has a
how
no
are the?
movement clause. He loves Toronto. He has family
Uh,
here. Like,
uh,
I'll see. But maybe he's
uh,
just tired of the pressure and the media and all the craziness. But it's gonna be an interesting offseason. Have to find a president and GM. Have to prepare for the draft. Have to make seismic changes to this roster on the back end in particular. But also really everywhere, to be honest. So it's going to be really interesting.
in their
Uh,
hearts mostly. Yeah.
yeah, but I think we should end it here. I think it's been a
Is
really
that enough?
interesting. I mean, it's. I think we've covered everything. It's another critical off season, and we're on another roller coaster, and hopefully we're strapped in.
Oh, we'll be ready for the draft lottery. That'll be an exciting night, regardless of what happens. And we'll be excited for, I guess, maybe some hires, and we'll be excited for the merciful end of the season.
That we will. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this episode. We love talking about Leafs, even though they may cause us so much pain, both mentally and physically. But nonetheless, it's a team that we will continue to watch and just just support this franchise through thick and thin. Greg, is there anything else that you want to say?
No, goodbye, Leafs Nation. Thanks for watching. Yeah.
Alrighty, and we'll see you in the next episode.